Hi, I'm Leora Hale. I used to think the worst thing my mother ever did was lie to me. But it wasn't the lie. It was how calm she sounded when she told it. At 2 a.m., she called me after months of silence and said, "Come to the hospital. Meet me behind the old shed. Come alone." That night, I learned my family never told the truth. Not about my brother, not about me, not about what we really were. And if I hadn't opened that door, I never would have known what she was hiding or who she kept alive. So, before we begin, what time is it for you right now? And where are you listening from? Because what I'm about to share might just change how you look at your own family. Ever been told not to call the police? Yeah, that was my first warning, and I didn't listen. Let's begin. I was dreaming about the ocean when my phone started ringing. That sound, sharp, vibrating through the quiet, yanked me up so fast my heart kicked against my ribs. For a second, I didn't even know where I was. Then the red digits on the bedside clock came into focus. 2:03 a.m. The phone glowed on the nightstand. The name on the screen froze me. Mom. I hadn't seen that name light up in months. Not since the argument. Not since I'd walked out of her office, with my badge still clipped to my scrubs, my throat raw from holding back what I really wanted to say. My mother never called unless something was wrong. I answered. "Mom?" Her voice came through soft, breathy, like she was whispering through clenched teeth. "Leora, you need to meet me. Behind the hospital, the old storage shed." I blinked, sitting up. "What? What happened?" "Just come. Alone." There was a metallic clang on her end, something falling, then silence. The line went dead. For a moment, I sat there staring at my reflection in the black phone screen. My chest tightened. I should have called the police. That's what anyone would do. But this was my mother, Dr. Marin Voss, the woman who used to say, "We don't air family business in public." I got dressed, pulling on jeans, the first coat I could find. My hands shook as I grabbed my car keys. The heater in the car coughed to life, blowing lukewarm air that smelled faintly of old coffee. Evanston was quiet. Streetlights washed everything in orange. Snow drifted lazy and soft across the windshield. The city felt empty, like it had stopped breathing. The hospital sat at the end of the road, its windows glowing faintly through the fog. I turned down the back drive, where deliveries came during the day. My headlights swept over dumpsters and the old storage shed she'd mentioned, barely visible behind the fence. I parked, killed the engine. My breath clouded the air as I stepped out. The cold hit like a slap. She was there. My mother stood by the shed, coat unbuttoned, hair loose, the snow settling on her shoulders. She looked smaller than I remembered, paler, but her voice, steady, low, still carried that tone that could slice through steel. "Before you go in," she said, blocking the door, "promise me you won't call the police." "What are you talking about?" "Just promise." Her eyes darted toward the door. There was something behind it. Something she didn't want me to see, or maybe something she couldn't face alone. I hesitated. Memories hit me in fragments. Her voice at dinner years ago. "We protect our own, always." I nodded once. "Okay, I promise." Her shoulders dropped a little, but she didn't move. The air between us was thick, heavy with something unspoken. Then I heard it. A sound from inside the shed, faint, irregular. Breathing. And underneath that, a scrape, like something dragging across concrete. My stomach turned. "Mom, what did you do?" She pressed her lips together, shaking her head. "I couldn't leave him there." "Him?" I echoed. My mind raced. Was it a patient? A stranger? A body? I took a step closer. Her hand shot out, gripping my sleeve, fingers icy cold. "Leora, please," she whispered. "Just be careful." The doorknob was freezing under my hand. I pushed it open slowly. The smell hit first. Iron, disinfectant, something metallic that burned my throat. The light flickered overhead, and then I saw him. A man slumped forward, tied to a chair, wrists bruised. His face pale, lips cracked, hair longer than I remembered. It was Caleb, my brother, missing for 2 years. My breath caught somewhere between a gasp and a cry. My knees went weak, and I grabbed the doorframe to stay upright. He was alive. Barely, but alive. I turned to my mother, voice barely a whisper. "What have you done?" Her eyes filled, but she said nothing. Just that same controlled, haunted silence she'd always used when truth was too dangerous to speak aloud. Snow drifted through the open door, landing on Caleb's shoulder, melting into the torn fabric of his shirt. My hands trembled. I couldn't move, couldn't think. Everything I thought I knew about her, about us, cracked right there in that dim light. I didn't blink. Couldn't. My eyes burned, but I kept staring at him like he'd vanish again if I looked away. Caleb. His head hung to the side, dark hair matted with sweat and dried blood. One sleeve of his shirt was torn, the fabric stuck to a stain that hadn't dried yet. His lips were cracked. I whispered his name, barely breathing. "Caleb?" Nothing. No flinch. No flicker. My mom was already kneeling beside him, her hands moving with that same surgical precision I'd watched since I was a kid. She pressed a towel to his side, her fingers coated in red. "He broke into my house," she said flatly. "Last night." I looked at her, trying to make sense of the words. "What?" She didn't glance up. "He had a key. Let himself in through the side door." A chill ran through me that had nothing to do with the snow still drifting outside. "You didn't call anyone?" "I couldn't," she snapped. "I couldn't let him just disappear again, not after everything." The same metallic clang from the phone call echoed in my mind like a warning bell I hadn't paid enough attention to. I reached into my coat for my phone out of instinct, but my hand froze halfway. "Promise me you won't call the police." I'd said yes. I'd nodded. And now I was standing in a shed with my bleeding, unconscious brother, and the woman who'd taught me to obey rules was breaking every single one. My throat tightened. "Mom, what the hell is going on?" She looked at me now, really looked. Her eyes were glassy but hard, cold. "He had something, I don't know what. He said it could ruin everything." I moved closer, kneeling on the other side of Caleb. "Ruin what?" She didn't answer. "He's been gone for 2 years," I said. "You told me he ran. You told the hospital he was a thief." "He was," she hissed. "He stole meds, Leora. He forged prescriptions. He humiliated me in front of the board. You cut him off. There was no choice," she said, standing suddenly, wiping her hands. "I told him, no weakness. This family doesn't survive weakness." I stared at her. "That wasn't weakness. That was your son, Mom." She turned her back. "He made his choice." Caleb shifted, groaning. His head lolled slightly. My heart jumped. He was alive. Barely. I leaned closer, touching his arm. "Caleb, can you hear me?" His eyes fluttered but didn't open. A sound escaped his mouth. A whisper, maybe. But it didn't make sense. Then, barely audible, "She promised me." My mom spun around. "He doesn't know what he's saying." But that sentence stuck like a barb in my skin. She promised me. It sounded too familiar. Like, before you go in. Promise me you won't call the police. I stood slowly. My eyes scanned him. That's when I saw it, clipped to his belt. An access badge, hospital issued. Same layout as mine, but the color strip was different. Dark red. That meant pharmacy access. Restricted. He shouldn't have had that. No one without a current, valid position could get one. I stared at it, my thoughts racing. "How did he get that?" I asked. My mom didn't answer. "You gave it to him?" No. You framed him? She spun to face me, her voice sharp. I did what I had to do. That's not a no. Do you think I'd risk everything for him, after what he did to us? I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because part of me remembered that night 2 years ago, the night he disappeared. The board meeting the next morning where she sat straight-backed and cold, telling them Caleb had shamed the family, that he had to be cut loose. I looked back at my brother, gaunt, bloodied, muttering in fragments. Whatever happened, it hadn't started tonight. He groaned again. She said, I'd be safe. You don't know what he's talking about, she said quickly. His mind's not clear. I wasn't sure whose voice I trusted less now, hers or his. I reached for the towel. We need help. He needs to be at the ER. Her hand slapped mine away, harder than I expected. If you call anyone, we all go down. I stared at her. What are you so afraid of? The air between us crackled. Outside, the snow had thickened, blanketing the lot. My car was nearly buried. Even if I wanted to leave, I'd have to dig my way out. And then, there it was again, that metallic clang. Not from inside this time, from out there. I looked toward the door. Something or someone was still outside. The sound froze me. Not loud, but deliberate. Metal scraping against something solid, just beyond the fogged glass of the shed's narrow window. My breath hitched as I stepped closer, trying to peer out, but the night had turned to a blur of white. Snow swirled, thick and blinding. Inside, my mother snapped behind me. Now! She didn't wait for a response. She yanked the shed door closed and turned the bolt. The clang echoed in the hollow space like a warning. Then, as if nothing had happened, she brushed her palms clean and nodded toward Caleb. We'll move him in an hour. You'll go home, change, and show up to work like always. No one knows a thing. She didn't say please. She never did. I didn't sleep. I barely moved after that. I sat on the edge of my bed, fully dressed in scrubs, watching the city turn from charcoal to gray to gold through the window. At 7:42, I walked into the hospital like I'd done every weekday for 10 years. Morning light slanted through the east-facing windows, casting long shadows across the polished floors. I passed by a few techs in the hallway. We exchanged nods. Morning, Leora. Hey. Rough night? I forced a smile. Yeah, full moon, right? Fake laugh. Keep walking. Don't think about the shed. Don't think about Caleb. But I did. Every step, every breath, I felt like I was dragging him with me. The smell of antiseptic clung to my skin. I hadn't scrubbed long enough. My hands wouldn't stop trembling. In the break room, the coffee was burnt. I poured a cup anyway and stood by the window, trying to gather myself before the next thing hit. I didn't have to wait long. Come to my office, my mother said, passing by without looking at me. 5 minutes later, I was sitting across from her mahogany desk, the blinds drawn halfway, her nameplate gleaming under the lamplight. She didn't sit, just walked around the desk and dropped a folder in front of me. There's nothing to report, she said. Last night didn't happen. I opened the folder. Hospital logs, Caleb's patient file, access records. But things were missing. Entire entries gone, redacted timestamps, medication logs half filled. Some of it looked like it had never existed. You did this? I whispered. I took care of it. He's under observation, in my wing. No one outside this room knows. Let's keep it that way. I stared at her, the words rotting in my mouth. This isn't cleaning up a mess. This is rewriting the past. She tilted her head. Do you think this hospital survives another scandal? Do you? I didn't answer. She already knew. I spent the next 2 hours pretending to work. At my station, I checked vitals, refilled trays, smiled at parents, nodded at doctors. But behind the screen, I was combing through the digital logs. Caleb's name had been wiped clean from the system. But the access data couldn't lie. Someone used a badge to get into the restricted pharmacy wing at 2:03 a.m. My badge. Except I had been in a freezing shed with a brother who should have been long gone. I stared at the screen, my stomach flipping. Caleb's badge had looked like mine. Same format, same hospital seal. Only his strip was red. A knock startled me. I turned. Nina Delgado, one of the younger nurses on rotation, poked her head in. "Hey, you okay?" I nodded too quickly. "Yeah, just tired." She stepped inside, lowering her voice. "Listen, I heard something. Admin's been asking about you. Something about badge access last night." My blood iced. "What do you mean?" "They were looking at the logs. Said your credentials were flagged. I don't know all of it, but—" She glanced around. "Look, I've got a friend in security. If you want, I can try to pull the footage." I nodded, not trusting my voice. 20 minutes later, we were in the small tech room near the ER wing. Nina's contact had pulled the time-stamped camera logs. Every camera near the storage shed disabled at 1:58 a.m. Every camera except one, over the door to my mother's wing, the one place Caleb shouldn't have been. "He didn't break in," I said aloud, without meaning to. "Someone let him in." Nina turned to me. "What are you caught up in, Leora?" I didn't have the answer. Not yet. But when I found my mother in the hallway, outside surgical prep, I didn't hide. "You said it was over," I said. "You said we were in the clear." She kept walking. "You're imagining patterns." "Someone used my ID." "You've been under stress," she replied calmly. "Go home. Sleep." That tone, soft, dismissive, poison-coated, burned through my chest. She wasn't protecting us. She was staging a story, one where I was the villain. That night, after my shift ended, I returned to the admin terminal behind the pharmacy wing. My hands moved without hesitation. I copied every relevant file, access logs, inventory records, archived entries from Caleb's old file, onto a flash drive. I labeled it Shed. I didn't confront her, not yet. I left the office, the drive burning in my pocket, and headed down the corridor toward the west exit. Then the intercom crackled. "Dr. Voss, please report to security. Pharmacy breach detected." But the voice wasn't hers. It was Dr. Kimball, the hospital's chief of staff. And then came the second line, clear, clipped, devastating. "Leora Hale, please report to security. Your badge has been flagged." I stopped cold. I turned slowly toward the intercom speaker overhead, heart slamming against my ribs. Every footstep in the corridor suddenly felt like it echoed too loud, too long. "Security, now!" I passed the nurse's station with my eyes down. No one looked at me funny. No whispers, no stares. The announcement was public, but somehow the world kept turning like nothing happened. The elevator ride to the lower floor stretched on forever. Each ding was a countdown. When the doors finally opened, the security office stood waiting. Quiet, clean, humming with that sterile tension only hospitals seem to know how to generate. 3 people sat inside. 2 administrators I recognized from HR, and 1 officer sitting still with a clipboard in hand. Off to the side, perfectly composed as always, was my mother. She didn't meet my eyes right away, just crossed one leg over the other, hands folded neatly in her lap. The picture of professionalism. She'd positioned herself like a bystander, worried but impartial. "Leora," said the male administrator, motioning for me to sit. "We need to speak with you regarding a serious matter." I sat, kept my breathing steady. "We received flagged activity from your badge ID at 2:03 a.m. this morning, granting access to the restricted pharmacy wing. Unauthorized entry." He passed me a printed log. My name, my ID number, timestamp, doors accessed. I didn't say anything. We take controlled substance access violations seriously. The woman next to him added, "This will require an internal investigation, starting today." They waited. I could feel the weight of the silence pushing me down into the chair. When I looked up, my mother was finally watching me. Not a word, not even a twitch. I stood. "I'd like to speak to legal before I say anything else." The officer nodded. "That's your right." The meeting ended fast after that, but the fallout was only just starting. We exited the room into the dim corridor. I expected Marin to walk away, maybe head back to her office. Instead, she fell in step beside me, close but not touching. "You handled that well," she said lightly. "Calm. That's important." I stopped walking. "You're letting them think I did this." Her voice dropped. "You think raising your voice helps? You want them digging deeper? You and I both know how fast this hospital turns on its own." I stared at her. "You let them accuse me." She stepped forward, her tone like a warning disguised as kindness. "If you stay quiet, I'll clean this up. But if you make noise, if you push, then I can't stop them." That was when I saw it, on the edge of her clipboard, half covered by her hand. A file folder. The label read, "Incident, Hale." I reached fast before she could pull it away. Inside were reports, statements with my name on them, signatures, my signature, but I'd never written any of it. Medication audits falsified to show discrepancies, patient notes, backdated, logs that never existed in my shifts. "You forged these," I said, throat tight. Marin's mouth barely moved. "Don't be dramatic." She didn't have to yell to dominate a room. That was her gift. "You're setting me up," I whispered. "You're panicking," she replied smoothly. "You've always been too reactive. This is why I have to clean up after you." Her words brought me back years in an instant. I was 16 again, standing in our kitchen, overhearing the fallout of my father's affair. Headlines had hit the local news. Patients had started asking questions. I remember her gripping the countertop so tightly, her knuckles went white. "We say nothing, we do nothing," she'd told me and Caleb. "We protect the family, no matter what it costs." It was the same now, only this time I was the cost. I left her office without another word. My head buzzed, my vision tunneled. By late afternoon, the weight of it all had pushed me to the edge. I texted Nina. We met near the lower tech lab, where she'd already bypassed the firewall on the security system. She motioned for me to look at the screen, a backup log, hidden footage. My mother, clear as day, swiping into the restricted pharmacy wing at 2:03 a.m., Caleb behind her. And the badge she used? Mine. "That's not a coincidence," Nina murmured. "She planned this," I said, "from the beginning." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I burned. We copied the footage, made 2 backups. Then I climbed the stairs to the hospital roof. I didn't want a room. I didn't want witnesses. I wanted sky. The sun was sinking, throwing gold over the rooftop's concrete edges. Marin was already there, leaning against the railing like she was waiting for me. "I found the footage," I said. She didn't flinch. "You used my badge. You took him in. You staged the whole thing." Marin finally looked at me, her face unreadable. "You think you understand what I've done?" she said quietly. "You don't. I have carried this family on my back for 30 years. You have no idea what that costs." "You're destroying the very thing you claim to protect," I said, "and you're too proud to see it. I saved your job. I gave you your career. You want to throw that away? Be my guest." Her voice was too calm, too confident. Then, for a moment, something cracked, just beneath her eyes. A flicker, not rage, not guilt, fear. "I'm done," I said. "I'm not playing your games anymore." I turned and left. The sky had gone fully dark by the time I reached the main hallway. My phone buzzed in my coat pocket. Unknown number. I tapped the screen. You're not the only one she's lied to. Attached was a video, shaky, blurry, but unmistakable. My mother, standing at the storage shed, whispering something to someone off camera. A shape just barely visible. A second accomplice? My heart dropped. I looked up toward the hospital windows, glowing like eyes in the night. The trap was bigger than I thought. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I laid on the couch, not my bed, because I couldn't face the bedroom walls. Too many memories, too many reminders of what life used to feel like when I trusted the people closest to me. The flash drive sat on the coffee table like a live wire, still plugged into my laptop, quietly holding everything I wasn't ready to face. Yet, by morning, I pulled my hair into a knot, slipped into scrubs out of habit, and walked back into Evanston General like nothing had changed. But everything had. The hallways were just as cold, the coffee just as weak. But I wasn't invisible anymore. I was radioactive. Conversations tapered off when I passed. One nurse, someone I'd trained 2 years ago, couldn't even look me in the eye. Whispers traveled faster than charts. They'd heard, or they thought they had, an ethics violation, the rumor said. Suspension pending investigation. Read the HR email that hit my inbox before noon. I sat in the cafeteria, tray untouched, staring through the glass windows as a light snow began to fall. I watched Marin glide past the hallway outside, calm as sunrise, clipboard in hand, nodding to a doctor from cardiology like it was any other Thursday. She wasn't just surviving, she was thriving in the chaos she created. My silence kept her safe, again. By late afternoon, I was back home. The silence felt louder there. I tried calling Caleb, just in case. Disconnected. Of course it was. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I dialed my mother's number, straight to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. Instead, I sat on the edge of my bed, elbows on knees, remembering the sound of metal scraping on asphalt. Caleb had stolen the family car when we were teenagers, smashed it into a mailbox 3 blocks from our house. I'd covered for him without question. Told the officer I was driving. I was 16. She never thanked me, only reminded me, years later, that's how loyalty works. Loyalty. Funny how that word had never protected me, only her. There was a knock on my door around 6. Not hard, just enough to stir me from my thoughts. It was Nina. She didn't say hello, just handed me a folded printout. "You need to see this," she whispered. I closed the door behind her and unfolded the pages. Not drug records, medical logs. She leaned in. "These aren't about the missing pills. Look at the trial numbers. Trial 47, Trial 46. Some not even coded properly. Unregistered experiments," she said. "Not approved by any review board. They used patient stock for something else." I scanned the page again. Patient initials. Dosages that didn't make sense. Notes signed off by Marin. Mild reaction. Will observe 24 hours. Subject unaware of compound variation. "This isn't about Caleb," I said quietly. "She was protecting herself. He found out. That's why he disappeared." Nina nodded. "She was using the drug supply to hide her own trial data, and now she's burying you with it." I didn't ask how Nina got the file. I didn't care. That night, I walked down to the lake, the same old park where Marin used to take us as kids when things got tense. She'd sit us on the benches and say, "Whatever's happening at home, keep it inside. People are always watching." The bench was still there, empty. I sat. The wind off the lake cut through my coat, but I didn't move. I thought about that night outside the shed, the weight of her voice. "Promise me you won't call the police." I had said yes, and I hated myself for it. All these years of swallowing truth, of watching her twist every fire into her favor. The lies had protected her for decades, and I had become one of them. I went home. I didn't turn on any lights. Instead, I sat down at the coffee table and opened the flash drive. It was all still there, more files than I remembered. Patient logs, coded spreadsheets, a series of video files. One caught my eye. Trial 47, recorded by Dr. M. Voss. I played it. The video was grainy. Her voice was not. "This is Trial 47, she said, standing next to a male patient strapped to a gurney. "Limited application of Compound E, administered subcutaneously at 08:42. No prior consent. Observation underway." Her face looked the same as always. Composed, clinical, just detached enough to scare me. I paused it, dragged the files to a cloud folder I'd created earlier, set a password only I knew. Then I opened a note app and typed 2 words. No more protecting. I leaned back in the dark, my heart quieter than it had been in days. Not calm, just certain. A soft knock broke the silence. I got up slowly, walked to the door, peered through the peephole. A man I didn't know stood in the hallway, mid-30s, ball cap pulled low. He didn't knock again. He slid something under the door, then walked away. I waited until his footsteps disappeared. It was a photo. Caleb, standing in the shadows behind the ER last night, awake, watching. On the back, one sentence. I stared at the words again. He remembers everything. The ink had bled slightly into the photo paper, as if the writer had pressed too hard, as if they wanted to make sure I couldn't ignore it. My hands shook, but not from fear. Not exactly. It was more like adrenaline mixed with something old and sour, something I'd been carrying for years without realizing it. Hope. Caleb was alive. By the time I grabbed my coat, the sky outside had deepened into that kind of blue that only shows up in Midwestern winters. Cold, sharp, too honest. The hospital's parking lot was nearly empty when I got there. I parked a block away, the same way he must have done, and walked to the side gate in the photo. It was quieter than it should have been, just the wind and the hum of distant HVAC fans. Then I saw it, cigarette ash scattered near the gate. And between 2 bricks, a small folded note, damp from melted snow. Don't trust her. Don't trust anyone. No signature, no explanation. But I didn't need one. It was his handwriting. For the first time in days, I felt something sharp and clear cut through the fog. Not confusion, but understanding. Caleb wasn't just alive, he was hiding from her. I tucked the note into my pocket and left before anyone could see me. The next morning, Nina met me at a small cafe on Main Street, the kind of place that served burnt coffee and blueberry muffins that tasted like cardboard. It was safe, anonymous. She slid her laptop across the table as I sat. "I watched the rest of the videos," she said. "You need to see this." The timestamps from the recordings matched hospital logs, nights of unexpected patient deaths labeled as medication errors. But they weren't errors. Each mistake coincided with experimental doses listed in the unapproved trial files. "This isn't malpractice," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "It's research, human testing. And your mother's at the center of it." We didn't finish our coffee. By midnight, I was back at the hospital, walking the corridor with my head down, my ID badge hidden inside my coat. Nina had borrowed a master key card from a friend in maintenance. We slipped through the lower stairwell into the sub-level no one talked about, the old research wing. The air changed the moment we stepped in, heavy, metallic, the kind of air that tastes like it's been trapped for years. "Equipment storage," the sign said, but the walls told another story. Old radiation symbols, sealed doors marked biohazard, and a low hum coming from somewhere deeper inside. We followed the sound. At the end of the hall, a single keypad door glowed green. The code Nina used worked on the first try. Inside, the hum grew louder. Machines still running, still alive. On a desk sat a stack of files stamped Project Helix. Phase 3. I picked one up. My breath caught. A photo. My mother, Caleb, and a man I didn't recognize. Tall, clean-cut, wearing a white coat with the name Dr. Alan Pierce. They were shaking hands, smiling like people who had just made a deal. It wasn't just her. I felt the room tilt. Every question I had about that night, the call, the panic, the promise, shifted into something darker. She wasn't acting alone. Then a voice behind us broke the silence. "You shouldn't be here." I turned. A man stood in the doorway, holding a security tablet. Dr. Pierce looked exactly like the photo, just older. His eyes weren't angry. They were calm, detached, almost polite. "Your mother said you'd come eventually," he said. "Curiosity runs in the family." Nina stiffened beside me. I took a step forward. "You were part of this. The trials, the cover-ups, everything." He smiled faintly. "You think this is about right and wrong? It's about results. Your mother understood that. She still does." "Why call me that night?" I demanded. "Why start all of this?" He tilted his head. "Ask her. You'll find she didn't have a choice." Before I could speak again, he turned and walked away. Just like that. No rush, no fear. We left the lab minutes later, hearts pounding. The elevator ride back up felt endless. When we finally reached the first floor, Nina pressed her palms to her temples. "Leora," she said quietly, "I've been getting messages too." I looked at her. "What do you mean?" "Hospital system alerts. From an anonymous sender. They're labeled Voss Inquiry. They started the night of the shed." I froze. Someone triggered her call. She didn't decide to meet me. Someone made her do it. Nina nodded. "And I think it was him." Everything clicked, and it made me sick. Pierce had manipulated the one person I'd spent my whole life trying to understand. The 2 a.m. call, the promise, the panic. None of it was random. He'd set it all in motion to keep both of us silent. By the time I made it home, dawn was bleeding through the blinds. The photo of Caleb still lay on my kitchen table. I flipped the envelope over, tracing the edges where the paper met the glue. Something was faintly written along the inside seam. "He's not the only one she kept alive." The room seemed to shrink around me. My throat went dry. I looked at the flash drive, at my mother's face frozen on the paused video still. Then at my reflection in the dark window. "Who else?" I whispered. The refrigerator clicked on behind me, startling me enough to flinch. I stood there, staring into nothing, realizing the truth wasn't anywhere near over. The deeper I dug, the less it felt like I was uncovering lies. It felt like I was walking straight into the center of something designed to swallow me whole. I sat motionless for a long time, staring at the faint handwriting tucked into the flap of the envelope. "He's not the only one she kept alive." That one sentence looped through my head like a ticking clock I couldn't silence. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, that phrase echoed louder. I got up, turned on the small desk lamp in my kitchen, and plugged the flash drive back in. I didn't know what I was searching for. Maybe something to disprove the note. Maybe just proof that Caleb was the only one. I opened the medical logs, line after line of test records, dosages, names reduced to numbers. Then, halfway down the screen, a record stopped me cold. Subject 24, L. Hale, age 6 months, dosage stable. I read it again and again. I couldn't breathe. There was no denial, no question. I wasn't just connected to the trials. I was part of them, my name, my age, my mother's handwriting. I sat there, trembling, bile rising in my throat. The file was dated months before my first known medical records. It explained everything. The sudden recovery when I was a baby, the vague answers whenever I asked about my early health. I wasn't just her daughter, I was her proof of concept. By morning, I'd already made up my mind. I needed to look her in the eyes. I needed to hear her say it. The sun was barely up when I drove to her house. Her blinds were open, and I could see her in the kitchen, sipping coffee like it was any other day. When I knocked, she didn't seem surprised to see me. "Come in," she said softly. I walked past her into the kitchen and dropped the printed file onto the table. "You experimented on me?" She didn't flinch, just reached for her mug again, like we were discussing groceries. "You were dying," she said. "No one else could save you. I did what I had to do." My throat tightened. "You didn't save me," I said. "You claimed me." For a moment, her mask cracked. Just for a second. "I was alone, Leora. Your father couldn't handle it. The hospital refused to approve treatment. They wanted to let you go." She looked down at the paper, then back at me. "I couldn't." I sat down slowly across from her. "You injected an untested compound into your own infant daughter. And then you built your entire career on pretending you didn't." She looked at me with something like pain. "You're here, aren't you?" "No, thanks to you." The silence between us was the heaviest thing in the room. And then she added, so quietly I almost missed it. "Caleb found the records. That's why he ran." "What?" "He wasn't trying to hurt me. He wanted to stop Pierce. He knew they were trying to replicate the formula, and not just on infants." I stood up, my legs shaking. "And instead of helping him, you shut him away. You lied. You buried it all." She didn't deny it. That night, I told Nina everything. We sat on my couch in silence for a long time. After I finished, she didn't ask questions. She just nodded slowly. "You did the right thing telling me," she said gently. It almost felt like comfort. Almost. But a few hours later, my phone rang. "Ms. Hale, this is hospital security. Someone just turned in a flash drive with your name on it. Are you able to come in and confirm ownership?" My heart stopped. There were only two people who had access to that drive. Me and Nina. She betrayed me. I hung up, locked my phone, and stared at the walls of my apartment like they'd shifted. I should have cried. I didn't. Instead, I opened the drawer beside my bed, pulled out the paper file with my name on it, and walked it straight to the kitchen sink. I struck a match. I watched the pages curl, blacken, and vanish. But not all of them. I kept one slip, a printout of a handwritten note from a later section of the drive. Phase 4, unreleased subjects. I stared at those words for a long time. If I was born from her experiment, then I'd be the one to end it. I didn't need her approval, or Pierce's permission, or Nina's help. I was done protecting what hurt me. I was just about to head to bed when my phone lit up again, another unknown number, another message. "You were never the only child." Attached was a photo, a hospital bracelet, subject 25, A. Hale. My blood ran cold. I sat down slowly, staring at the name, the number, the untouched edges of the bracelet. "Another one?" I whispered. "A sibling." The truth wasn't just in the past. It was walking around somewhere, alive, unknowing. Or worse, involved. The questions weren't ending. They were multiplying, and for the first time, I didn't want to run. I wanted answers. That thought followed me into the next morning like a pulse under my skin. The sun hadn't even risen, yet I was already sitting at my kitchen table, the photo printed and spread before me. Subject 25, A. Hale. The letters were clean, sharp, clinical. And the code number? It was from the same batch as mine, same serum, same project, same mother. The realization hit like ice water down my spine. If there was another Hale child, Then my mother's miracle experiment didn't just save one life, it created two. I opened my laptop and logged into the hospital archive, bypassing the restrictions the way Caleb had taught me years ago. It didn't take long to find it. A fragment buried under inactive patient records. Infant admitted 1992. No discharge record. That was the year I was born. The next field was blank. No death certificate, no transfer, just nothing. A hollow silence filled the room. If she had another baby, another subject, where was he now? By the time I reached the hospital, the sky had darkened again. It was close to midnight, the air thick with snow and static. I used my old badge to slip inside through the maintenance entrance, heading straight for the basement. The old pediatric wing had been sealed off for years, ever since the chemical spill incident that conveniently erased a decade of research. The hall was colder down there, the kind of cold that made the walls sweat. Dust coated the floor like a second skin. My flashlight beam caught faded photos taped to the walls, smiling infants in tiny gowns, under a sign that once read, Pediatric Research Volunteers. I kept walking until the light fell on something small, sitting in the corner. A cot. Its metal bars were rusted, the tag hanging crooked from one end. 25. My chest tightened. I moved closer and found a small folder beside it, sealed with a strip of yellow tape. My mother's initials were scrawled across the front. I tore it open. Inside, a single sheet, death certificate, subject 25. But the fields were empty. No date, no attending physician. Only one word typed at the bottom, transferred. Transferred where? I whispered to the empty room. Leora! Her voice came from behind me. I spun around. My mother stood in the doorway, pale and exhausted, her coat half-buttoned. You shouldn't be here, she said quietly. The same words Pierce had used. I stepped toward her. Who was subject 25? Her eyes flickered, and for the first time she looked small, human. Your brother, she whispered. The word hit me harder than I expected. I thought he died. He didn't, she said. The serum didn't kill him. It made him stronger. But it changed him. Pierce took him away. I thought he was gone until last year. I tried to breathe, but the air felt too thin. All these years, I said slowly, you let me believe it was just me. You never said I had a brother. I was protecting you. From what? From the truth. Her voice cracked, and for the first time since I could remember, I saw her shaking. The night I called you, she said, he was in the shed, subject 25. He'd escaped the facility. He wasn't supposed to survive that long, but he did. Caleb found him and tried to help him get away. I panicked. I thought if I could contain it, keep it quiet, we could fix it before anyone found out. So you locked them both away, I said bitterly. Your sons. She didn't answer. I took out my phone and hit record. You played God, Mother. Her eyes widened. Leora, don't. I'm done protecting you. I saved lives, she insisted. Hundreds of children who would have died. No, I said, voice steady. You saved your name. Her breath caught. I uploaded the recording to a secure contact, one of the investigative journalists Caleb had trusted. The progress bar crawled across the screen while my mother stood frozen, watching everything she built unravel in real time. Then, from somewhere above, I heard sirens. Not police, private security, Pierce's men. They'll come for you too, she warned. You think they'll let you walk away? I don't need to walk, I said. I just need the world to see. Nina appeared in the doorway, breathless, her eyes wild. They're on their way down. Come on. I didn't ask why she was there or how she knew. I just followed. We ran through the maintenance tunnel, the same one we'd used before. Behind us, alarms blared, echoing like thunder through the corridors. we burst out onto the hospital roof as dawn cracked open the horizon. The city glowed beneath us, washed in red and gold. Helicopters circled in the distance. Marin followed us up. Her voice trembled. "Don't let them twist the truth, Leora. They'll destroy everything we worked for." "You already did that," I said. She took a step closer. "He's still out there. Subject 25. Your brother. Don't let him hate me." I met her eyes, those same gray eyes I'd inherited, and felt something shift inside me. Not hatred, not forgiveness, just release. "Then tell him yourself," I said. I turned away as sirens wailed below. The hospital parking lot filled with flashing lights, media vans, security cars, cameras. The story was already breaking. For the first time in my life, my mother wasn't the one in control. As I stepped into the elevator, my phone buzzed again. Another message from an unknown number. "He remembers you." I looked up at my reflection in the mirrored doors, the faintest trace of a smile tugging at the corner of my mouth. "Then let him find me." I stepped out of the elevator and into a world that no longer looked the same. It had been 2 weeks since I released the video. The storm that followed unraveled everything my mother spent a lifetime building. Federal agents raided the hospital within days. Dr. Pierce was led out in handcuffs, his office sealed and gutted. The media labeled it a medical scandal of generational proportions. Headlines flashed my name. Some called me brave, others reckless. I didn't read them. I didn't care what they thought anymore. Marin resigned before any formal charges were filed. No press conference, no statement. She just vanished. It was quiet after that. Not peaceful, but quiet, like the moment after an earthquake when everything's still standing, but nothing feels solid. I stopped trying to understand the noise of it all. I didn't want justice. I just wanted stillness, something I could trust under my feet. On a gray Tuesday morning, I drove alone to a small cemetery outside the city. The wind coming off the hills was sharp, dry. Winter hadn't quite let go. I parked near the edge and walked toward a new headstone near the back. The grass hadn't grown in yet. Fresh earth always told the truth. Caleb Hale, 1988, 2025. No quote, no inscription, just his name and years. Clean, simple, final. I knelt and placed a white lily at the base. It had been our mother's favorite flower, one of the few soft things about her. I thought maybe Caleb would understand why I chose it. I sat back on my heels and let the wind hit my face. "Hey," I whispered, like he could still hear me. "You were right. The truth needed light." I closed my eyes, and for a second, I heard his laugh again, low, unfiltered, the kind that always came right before he did something impulsive and stupid and loyal. I stayed there longer than I meant to. That afternoon, a courier showed up at my door with a plain white envelope. No return address, just my name, printed in clean block letters. Inside was a short letter in Marin's handwriting. "I did love you. Everything I did, I told myself it was to protect you. I see now, I was only protecting my fear." Taped to the bottom was a single brass key. The tag read, "Lakeside Storage, Unit 47. My breath caught. Trial 47. The one that started it all. The one she filmed. The one that made me." I didn't open the storage unit. Not right away. Instead, I drove north, back to Lake Michigan, to the same bench I sat on weeks ago. The one where I first asked myself if silence had protected the wrong people. The morning light slid low across the water. The lake was still, caught between seasons, ice hugging the edges but breaking near the shore. I sat down slowly, pulled the key from my pocket, and placed it on the bench beside me. I added a folded piece of paper next to it, something I'd written the night before, barely legible through the ink smears. Some silence isn't peace. It's just another way of hiding. I let that sit for a while. I wasn't hiding anymore. A little boy passed by with his mother, bundled in a puffy coat. He stopped near the edge, knelt, and dropped a paper boat into the lake. It floated forward, soft and aimless, like it had nowhere to be, but still belonged exactly where it was. I didn't move, didn't speak, just watched it drift until it disappeared beyond the rocks. My phone buzzed. I looked down. Message, subject 25 located. I didn't react right away. I just let the words settle in my chest. Then I exhaled, eyes still on the water. "Let him come," I said softly. "This time, no more promises." The lake didn't answer. It didn't need to. I sat a little longer, soaking in the quiet, letting the cold air wake something that had been sleeping in me for a long time. When I finally stood, my reflection in the water looked steadier, less haunted, whole. As I walked back toward my car, a thought floated up like a voice I hadn't heard in years, my own. For years, I thought silence was safety. My mother taught me that, but safety without truth is just another kind of cage. And the moment I stopped being afraid of the noise, I finally heard myself. I turned one last time to look at the lake. Far down the shoreline, two figures emerged, one tall, the other with a faint limp. They were too far to see clearly, but something in their shape, their stillness, tugged at a part of me I hadn't touched in decades. I didn't run toward them. I didn't wave. I just waited. The wind picked up. Footsteps echoed along the wood slats behind me. Then, silence again. But this time it felt like peace.